Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Today is the Commission's public forum on our draft decision for Barwon Water. My name is Rebecca Billings, and I'm one of the Commissioners of the Essential Services Commission. Just to let you know, this forum is being recorded to ensure access for those who are unable to attend. Any statement, comment, or question you make will be included in the recording, which we plan to make available on our website. To start, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of all the lands wherever you are today. For me, that's the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. I would also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land and water of the service area of Barwon Water. I would also like to pay my respects to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal people here today. Thank you to all who have taken the time to come together this afternoon. First, I'd like to introduce staff from the Commission. Marcus Crudden, Executive Director of Price Monitoring and Regulation, and a number of other key members of the water team from the Commission today. And from Barwon Water, I would like to welcome Tracy Slatter, Managing Director, and a number of key members of Tracy's team. And for the rest of you, I would like to thank all the people on the call for making the time to join us today. Just some quick housekeeping. If you do have questions or comments while someone is talking, please type them into the chat so we can build these into the conversation. If you're not speaking, please keep your microphone muted to avoid feedback and background noise. And in addition to your participation today, you can provide written feedback via the Engage Victoria website. And please do let us know if there's another preferred option for how we can engage with you. We do always appreciate your feedback. The web address for Engage Victoria will be on the slides we are about to start sharing with you. I'll use the first part of today's forum to give you a brief introduction to our role in price and regulation. But as always, the main purpose of this event is to hear from you and answer any questions you might have on our draft decision. To help shape today's discussion, we'll cover three key points: how we assess the price submission and our draft decision, and then Tracy from Barwon Water will have the opportunity to outline their submission and respond to points that we have made in our draft decision. We will then open to the floor and have the opportunity to hear from you. We appreciate being able to have an open and honest conversation with you today. Insights from these engagements do help shape our decisions. Just a little bit about the Commission. We regulate Victoria's energy, water and transport sectors, local government rate caps and the Victorian Energy Upgrades Program. We have been regulating water prices for more than 20 years, including for Barwon Water. For the water sector, we approve prices and service standards, monitor and report on performance, and administer customer service codes. We are currently reviewing water prices that will apply from 1 July 2023 for 14 of Victoria's water businesses. The prices we approve reflect an assessment of the efficient costs water businesses need to recover to provide valued services to their customers. Following consultation, we will issue a determination that sets the maximum prices that Barwon Water may charge customers. I'm now going to pass over to Marcus to step us through how we have assessed the price submission and come to our draft decision. Thank you, Marcus.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for attending. I'll just take you through a high-level sense of how we go about our task and the key issues coming from our draft decision. In particular, we assess price submission to ensure it complies with the requirements of the Water Industry Regulatory Order, That's an order issued by the government that, I guess, sets the rules for us and Barwon, broadly speaking, so we have to assess against criteria there. We also are required under that order to put out guidance, which sets out our expectations of the overall approach the business takes to its price submission. And we also have with that an incentive-based framework known as PRIMO, where some additional returns are linked to the levels of ambition in the price submission. We also have to ensure that submissions comply with relevant criteria in the Water Industry Act and the Essential Services Commission Act. A really important part, though, of this is that it is Barwon Water's price submission. We have to assess what Barwon Water puts forward before us, so we don't second guess and say we think alternative projects or approaches are appropriate. We have to really look at things like the prudency and efficiency of the expenditure they propose and the overall program they put forward. So very much they lead the dance. It's not the regulator tells Barwon what they need to do. We set out the framework within that legal framework, and Tracy and her team are responsible for the project and have ownership of that. And you seem to have lost the slides there for a second. Are we able to get those slides back? Sorry about that.
Just be
Lois, Shona, are you able to get the slide showing?
Sorry, Marcus, we're just having some technical there. I think they're coming. Thank you.
Just back one. Sorry about this, people. We're about halfway through all the presentations. We haven't had any technical difficulties up to this one. So, look, our draft decision does set out where we propose to approve or not approve. Again, that's the nature of the legal framework. We either approve things or we not approve and have to set out what things Barwon Water needs to do to gain approval. So it isn't necessarily a harsh judgment where we say something's not approved. In many respects, it may be a technical aspect, but that's sort of the legal framework we work under. We also have, it should be clear, this is a draft decision. So Barwon Water has the opportunity, as well as customers, to respond to aspects of that draft, and we'll take all that into consideration in reaching our final decision and making a price determination, which then becomes binding for the 5 years. Next slide. So this is where we are at the process, that we've made the draft. Submissions are due in 9th of May. We'll be making a final decision in mid-June, and prices will apply from the 1st of July. Next slide. Now, in terms of how we go about Barwon's proposal, and this is at a high level, but all the details are set out in our draft decision, we look at the engagement and how Barwon has used feedback from customers and community to shape their proposal. We test their expenditure and demand forecasts. We verify the supporting data and assumptions. So we follow up on the things that are within those documents to check that the underlying material is accurate. We evaluate how Barwon Water has managed risk and its performance over the last 5 years. And we review the OPEX and CAPEX costing and timing assumptions to make sure they are reasonable. With that, we use arm's length independent experts to assess on that. So the capital works program put forward by Barwon's been assessed at arm's length to the Commission by some quite senior experienced engineers to look at the costings and the feasibility of delivering all of that. So next slide. In overall summary of our draft decision, we accept the 5-year pricing period. Prices are generally decreasing in real terms over the 5-year period, but we do recognise we are, particularly in the short term, in a period of high inflation, and we'll come back to that shortly. We propose to accept the substantive elements of the price submission, including tariff structures in the form of price control, so that's a price cap form. We propose to accept their new customer contradictions. We largely accept the proposed revenue requirement. We made some very minor adjustments overall in the scheme of what's being spent over the period. So there's over 1.37 billion of revenue that Barwon will earn over the next 5 years. We do ask Barwon, because there's minor adjustments, just to respond to individual tariffs on those proposals. Next slide. These are the bills that sort of set out in the price submission. So they do increase by, well, they do decrease in real terms. With the inflation coming out earlier this week, though, that 7% inflation figure means prices will go up around 5.5% next year. So the nominal price rise is about $60 for a typical customer to $1,135. Now, Barwon's probably mid-rank to prices around the state. They range from about $900 up to about $1,500 for water businesses. I think in Tracy's presentation, you'll see that in real terms, Barwon Water's prices have been declining since over the last 10 years. So they really peaked at the end of the last drought and have delivered a consistent sort of reduction in prices over time. They're one of a group of businesses that are proposing prices that are less than inflation across the period. So we recognise the high inflation this year, and it's something we've asked Barwon to think about in responding to our decision. And I think Tracy will touch on that in her response. Next slide. As an operating and capital expenditure, we're fully signed off on the capital expenditure program. So it's a quite large program, but we're satisfied with that. And operating expenditure, there's a relatively minor adjustment there. Next slide. This is Barwon's forecast capital expenditure. So over the current period, it's been reasonably close to forecast. It has been across the sector. Capital's been a bit higher than expected. There has been significant pressure on input costs faced by Barwon Water, but the entire water sector. So while capital has been a bit higher than expected, we think that's within the feasible realms, and that's been checked off by our independent consultants. So we see going forward, there's capital's higher than what I may have thought it would be 5 years ago. But again, there are significant cost pressures on the sector. There's a very heated civil construction market out there, and perhaps like projects at our dear than what people might have expected them to be. In terms of operating expenditure, this is perhaps the one area of concern we had with Barwon's proposal, that operating expenditure over the current period was significantly higher than forecast. Now, that's been pretty common across the sector and has been a very unusual period with the pandemic and the rapid rise in inflation over the last 12 months or so. You can see that number ticking up, particularly in 21, 22. That is something we did spend a fair bit of time going through as part of the proposal to check that base expenditure was correct. I should also note that Barwon probably had some factors unique to themselves that also kind of escalated that cost, particularly some costs related to changing in water sources during the period, which were perhaps something couldn't be foreseen ahead of the period. We do see operating expenditure lower than where it sort of peaked over the next couple of years, and relatively flat across the period is the forecast at this stage. So we're satisfied and have reviewed those. So we're reasonably confident in Barwon's forecast for the next 5 years. On our Primo rating, we've accepted Barwon's self-assessment of advance. We consider that they met expectations for delivery against its outcome commitments over the current period. Its engagement program was very good. They've engaged pretty broadly with customers and communities and Indigenous customers during that period. I think one of the more impressive engagement exercises. And proposed outcome measures and targets have been developed in consultation with customers during that there. There's a significant, one of the higher efficiency improvement rates which is contributing to the real price declines. It has accepted some risks in areas on behalf of customers. So overall, we think this was probably one of the stronger proposals put forward by a water business. I think is a pretty comprehensive proposal, and I think Tracy will take us through a number of those elements pretty shortly. So, Lucy, just want to move on to the next thing. Probably, I don't think we highlighted there, and we probably should have with the rising prices as well, that Barwon have also put forward a significant expansion of its hardship and customer assistance program that I think Barwon's probably one of the leading programs already in the sector on the work they've done in assisting customers over the current period. And there's strong recognition that with rising prices and cost of living pressures that will need to be further expanded, but they do have one of the best programs available. So next slide, Lucy. Our price decision means prices will decrease in real terms before inflation, but bills will increase slightly for tenants. That's really relates to that preference that more user pays preference. So tenants only pay the variable components of bills, so tend to have a slightly different outcome than owner occupiers. There's also a gradual removal of a deficiency rebate that's been in place for a long period of time. Customers will continue to receive high quality drinking water. The treatment and disposal of effluent will continue. There are new investments in waterways. Barwon will continue to reduce its environmental footprint. So like the water sector will be moving towards 100% renewable energy by 2025 and will respond to the challenges of climate change across the period. Next one, Luz. So with that, I will close out and we'll hand over to Tracy Slater, Managing Director of Barwon Water, to give us an overview of the proposal and how they intend to respond to our decision.
Thank you very much, Marcus, and thank you very much, Commissioner Billings, as well for your introduction. And I'd also like to extend a warm welcome to everyone who is with us today, especially our members of our community and our customers. I really appreciate you taking the time to come along today and look forward to your contribution. Like Commissioner Billings, I would also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the country on which I am meeting today, and that is the Wadawurrung people. And I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and acknowledge their deep connection with this country. I also acknowledge any other Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people who may be joining us today. And I do want to recognise that our service area extends beyond the Wadawurrung to also include the Eastern Maar, and their views, as Marcus said, have absolutely helped to shape this submission, and indeed I think are helping to shape Barwon Water as an organisation, and in turn we want to walk with our traditional owners to help them care for country. Now, Barwon Water is Victoria's largest urban regional water commission. We service over 300,000 customers all year round, but being such a popular place to visit, that number extends to over 500,000 in peak times. And we do cover a large area, over 8,000 square kilometres. One of the things that I'm really proud about our price submission is that our price submission and our strategy are one and the same document. In the past, and this is the case I think for all other water corps, price submission was a separate document from the strategy. And what we have done is recognise that the price submission is our contract with our customers for what we do, how we do it, and how we will be accountable. And I want to make sure that our entire organisation is solely focused on delivering on that accountability. So there's no distractions. Our strategy and our price submission are one and the same. And it contains 4 customer outcomes that we commit to deliver to our customers and community. It describes how we will work with our customers and community and with each other. And importantly, it describes the impact that we want to have. Why do we exist? And that's to help our region prosper in every sense of the word: social, environmental, culturally, economically, and in terms of our livability. We didn't come up with these outcomes and this strategy on our own. As Marcus said, we had deep, ongoing, multi-layered engagement with our customers and community. We listened and learned from our traditional owners, First Nations people, local councils, leaders in our community, members of our community, and we lent big ears to small voices. In fact, we had over 336,000 interactions with customers and communities in the development of this plan. And we learnt through that process what our customers value most. And I want to express here my deep appreciation for the participation and deliberation of our customers and community through this process, which absolutely helped shape the submission. Now, in terms of those 4 outcomes, I just want to go through those in a little bit more detail and how we are putting our money behind those outcomes. So outcome 1 is a delivery of safe, secure, sustainable water. One of the things we plan to do here is extend the reach of the Melbourne to Geelong pipeline to supply more of our customers. Currently, many parts of the Geelong system have only the Anglesea bore field as their backup water source. That's a concern to us. This Melbourne to Geelong pipeline will mean that the entire Geelong system has, apart from Anglesea and Areas Inlet and Winchelsea, will have access to the backup source of the Melbourne to Geelong pipeline. Many people will be aware that whereas at the start of our last price submission we had access to the Barwon Downs bore field, we have relinquished access for that, not sought another licence, and are committing to rehabilitate. And as Marcus said, the unforeseen circumstances meant that we had to bring online other and more expensive water resources to deal with that. So this is really an extension of that program of work. We'll also be upgrading the Birregurra community water supply system and constructing new water, recycled water and sewer infrastructure to service the growth area of the North and West Geelong, which will see 110,000 people join the city of Greater Geelong. So it's not surprising to see a big spend there of just under $42 million. Outcome 2, innovative, reliable services. We will be renewing, repairing, replacing water and sewage infrastructure and ensuring that's done in an innovative and reliable way. Big spend there of over $200 million over the period. We'll also be trialling new technology in selected areas to help improve our sewer system performance and reduce spills of into the environment, which we think is unacceptable and want to get to a point of having 0 spills of sewer into our waterways and the environment. And we're also investing in our organisation being resilient to cybersecurity threats, with $14 million being spent there. I've talked a little bit about a healthier environment, but that outcome, the 3rd outcome, is an incredibly important one to our community. We plan to upgrade and construct new recycled water infrastructure and also, importantly, return 3,700 megalitres per year of water to the Moorabool River. The Moorabool River is one of the most flow-stressed rivers in Victoria, and that water will be shared between the Wadawurrung and the environment. And of course, we'll also support traditional owners on their journey to self-determination. There are 2 projects that we also are highly committed to, but haven't asked our customers to pay for at this point in time. They include building the regional renewable organic network at Black Rock, potentially a $40 million investment there. More detailed work is being done. Even once that is done, our board is committed to only going ahead with that project if our customers' bills will not go up. And in fact, what we're hoping for is that that will be an investment that will return not only dividends to the environment, but will be profit-making for Barwon Water and help keep downward pressure on bills for our customers. We also plan to invest in significant increase of recycled water on the Surf Coast hinterland, but again have not put in our price submission any funds for that, as that's still undergoing some detailed design work. And finally, perhaps the most important outcome of all, trust, value and affordability. As Marcus said, we are boosting our already very significant scheme of financial assistance to our customers. We are also upgrading our customer contact centre and staff's training to ensure that we are able to support every customer with their individual circumstances and their individual needs. And we will continue to help our customers and community understand the services that we provide and contribute to those services in a different way. One additional area of expenditure that we plan to go ahead with but isn't included in our submission here is the Forest wastewater treatment system. Forest is currently an unsewered town and is our highest priority to sewer. We're well underway with the work with the community. We now need to do detailed designs. We're very optimistic that we will be able to complete that project during this pricing period, but there's still a lot of detailed work to go, and so it didn't pass the test in terms of putting it forward onto the capital program at this time, but that won't stop us from proceeding or slow us down with proceeding with that work. Now, each one of these outcomes has 14 aspirations, high-level goals that we aim to achieve over the pricing period, and each one of those has a series of measures or key performance indicators, if you like, targets that we will be accountable for. And our customers and our community will receive regular reports on how we're performing against that, and on the items that are of most importance to our community. If we fail, there's up to $15.6 million at risk that we will need to return to customers if we don't deliver on our promise. A few other points about our submission, moving off the outcomes specifically. Our region is one of the fastest growing in Victoria, with Geelong in particular one of the fastest growing cities in Australia. And so a key driver of our capital program over the next 5 years is to make sure that our existing assets are renewed and are serviced and are working well, and 45% of our CapEx will be spent on that. But importantly, 33% of our capital expenditure will be on growth. We have thoroughly scrutinised our program to ensure that it's prudent and efficient, including an independent review of the business cases of 20 of our top projects and top programs. We've also strengthened our capital delivery model. As Marcus highlighted, we are in a very challenging capital market, and so we've improved and strengthened our own capability in this area, which gives us confidence on our ability to deliver $550 million of CapEx over the next 5 years. Despite all of these challenges and ambitions and outcomes that we want to deliver, we know that rising costs are a big concern for our customers, and our submission sets out a plan to keep bills affordable and declining in real terms. And so we're really proud that that is a trajectory that we've been on and we will continue to be on. In fact, our focus on affordability has seen average bills for residential customers reduced by 15%, or just over $180 in real terms from their peak in 2012-13. And average annual household water bills will decrease further in real terms in the next 5 years, from approximately $1,076 this year to $1,060 next financial year, continuing down to $999 in 27-28. And in addition, we are placing an efficiency saving on our organisation. It's quite ambitious at 1.95% efficiency target, so that we will continue to yield cost savings and operational efficiencies. In terms of our performance, and thank you, Marcus, for identifying that you agree that our performance has been relatively strong over the current period. We have delivered on our targets for 114 of 132 measures. So you can see 132 measures. We really put ourselves to the grist of the mill there, achieving 114 of those in full, despite the challenges that we have faced, including COVID, changes in the water security environment, and a much higher than forecast growth situation. We have demonstrated accountability for those performance items that we didn't meet, and that will see us return $187,000 to customers in this next price period. And that's over and above the declining prices I mentioned before. Our customers have been our absolute focus as an organisation and will continue to be. And the engagement and the listening to our customers and being an organisation that responds to the voices of our customers seems to be working. We have been among the top 4 water businesses in Victoria in terms of overall satisfaction, value for money, trust, and reputation in the community since August 2020. And I'm pleased to say that in the most recent survey, independent survey of our customers, we have been ranked number 1 for each and every one of those categories. So we're certainly going to have to work hard to keep those results going into the future. Now we do know, I want to talk some more about customers facing hardship and many facing hardship for the first time. So we will be boosting support to customers from 3 million to 4.8 million over this period. Household bills will decrease in real terms. We already provide the highest number of hardship grants per 100 customers, and we will continue to try and strive to be the water corporation that provides the most support. And our commitment is that anyone who needs support will receive support from Barwon Water. And Mark has outlined that there are a number of comments that they've made in relation to our submission, and I'd like to briefly respond to those 4 main areas of feedback. Firstly, we need to provide some information on the ESC's outcome reporting template, which we will do. Secondly, the ESC asked us to have a look at our population forecasts. We've done an extensive review of those again since that feedback has been provided. We did use forecast ID for ours. We found that the forecast ID forecasts have actually aligned with our actuals quite well, with an actual growth, for example, for 2021-22 was 2.2%, and based on year to date, it looks like being 2.1% for the year. And this can be compared against forecast ID estimates of 2.2% for each of those years. So we're pretty confident that the forecast ID forecasts are showing a tracking close to actuals, and so even though we've reviewed the VIF estimates, our view is that we should stick with those forecast ID population results. And we, of course, are prepared to wear any risk that if that doesn't pan out in that way, that we will manage those risks without passing on additional costs to customers. Cost of living, I've talked a little bit about that already, including the increase in financial assistance grants, and this means that more customers will be eligible for our successful Arrange and Save program, and also customers who need it will receive more assistance. Customers identified with extreme vulnerability will be eligible for even more tailored support. And there is, of course, our efficiency programs. We'll invest a further $2.5 million over the next 5 years to help customers save water through our plumbing programs, grants, rebates, and customer education. While we do plan to have our bills reducing in real terms, the price determination is a maximum bill that we can charge, and our board plays a very active role each year in determining what we will actually pass on to customers, which can be less than what the price determination is. And finally, we are aware that inflation is having a significant impact. Our bills are already one of the lowest in Australia for similar sized water corporations. And we have done some analysis of the costs that we'll be facing. And as Marcus identified earlier, there are a number of costs that are running way above the inflation rate. And that includes our capital program, but also items such as our energy costs and particularly our gas charges. And our analysis shows that we are likely to have costs increase at a rate overall, at a rate greater than the CPI numbers that have just been announced in the last couple of days. Even though some of our costs might run lower than inflation, the bulk of our costs are running much higher, and when you amortise that out, the bottom line is costs are likely to be ahead of that inflation figure at the moment. So we are at the moment proposing to pass on that inflation rate, noting that our bills will be reducing in real terms, and again that our board will make decisions taking into account the factors that are impacting on our customers. So that really wraps it up for me, and I look forward to questions from our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy, for that comprehensive presentation. It is now time for me to open to the floor for questions to either Tracy or the Commission. I will probably ask the first question just to get everyone warmed up. So Tracy, if you wouldn't mind obliging me with the first question. I have been participating in many of the water business forums over the past few weeks, and we have heard that the transition to net zero has caused some issues for some water businesses, and would be interested in hearing about Barwon Water's experience in that space.
Yeah, thanks, Rebecca. A very important topic. So we're spending a lot of our focus on the broader resilience of our organisation to climate change and cyber and supply chain impacts, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a broader piece of resilience work going on. But specifically in relation to net zero, we're very confident about our program of work. In particular, the innovations being led by Sean Cumming on the renewable organic networks mean that we are being able to transition to a zero emission business without passing on cost to our customers. And in fact, as I said, innovations like the renewable organic network are likely to actually provide net profit to Barwon Water, which will keep downward pressure on prices. So we are determined to achieve this, continue to achieve this in an innovative way. And we're also exploring how we can support waterway health, as well as, and combining that with plantation of Indigenous plantations and sequestering carbon in that regard. So again, just continuing to explore ways to do this in a cost-effective way that doesn't pass those costs on to customers. So we, there is some cost. It doesn't come without cost, but I think the innovations that we're putting in place will mean that we will be delivering significant value to our customers and community.
Thank you, Tracy. And we have a hand up. Is it Lachlan? Would you mind coming off mute and introducing yourself and putting forward your question?
Yeah, thanks, Rebecca. Lachlan Gordon from Friends of the Barwon. First of all, I'd like to say I think Barwon Water have done a fabulous job over the last 5 years, And my question is not specifically to them, it's probably more to the Essential Services Commission yourselves. I do question the relentless drive to lower the price of water. The Secretary General of the OECD says that water is a precious resource and must be priced accordingly. I believe that lower prices tend to lead to higher consumption, and we have no form of resource rent on the water that we extract from the environment. So for instance, in our area, we have the West Barwon Dam. The West Barwon Dam is an in-stream dam, and consequently it affects all the organic material which goes down the Barwon River, and therefore affects all the aquatic creatures and everything that are in the river. There's no form of resource rent. Basically, water is free to our community. It's only the cost of getting it from A to B that we pay for. I think that we need to have a revenue source to compensate for the environmental damage that's done, and that is done overseas by having innovative pricing systems. We're not having them here where we have a two-tier pricing system. They've been proven to work overseas. Why don't we have them here? Now, also, we've got a problem because we've got water corporations across the state, and they are now connected by the Victorian grid, and yet we have difficulty with different corporations having different policies, and I'm wondering how that's all going to work out in future. We know we're going to need to have a big manufactured water source, either desal or potable recycled, and how is that going to be paid for? We seem to be in the dark a bit with that. I gather there's work going on at the state government level, but we're not really privy to it. The public should know what's going on there. We need to be front and centre of public debate about what is happening with manufactured water. For example, we've got a lot of water going out of the Eastern Treatment Plant. It's Class A water. It could be very cheaply brought up to potable recycled standard, and that is a conversation that we really must have. I think we're burying their heads in the sand, and we're not really looking at where the future is going to be. We're going from a La Nina with all our dams full across Victoria now. It'll be going into an El Nino. In 5 years' time, I think we'll be looking at a very different picture, and I think that the Essential Services Commission should be considering some of the points I've just made. Thank you.
Thank you, Lachlan, and absolutely acknowledge your concern in terms of water as a resource that is not finite. A number of your points do extend beyond the regulatory framework that we have responsibility for, but I might just throw to Marcus to give you a bit more context and detail in that regard.
Thanks, Lachlan. And we take down the points. And as Rebecca said, some are policy matters that are DECA, not us. We're not a policy agency. But I guess the drive of the first comment about the drive of water prices, that overall, I guess, water and sewage prices are declining, but in particular, variable water prices have risen significantly over time. So the emphasis has been on more towards that. Regionals particularly face some constraint there because of tenants paying the variable charge, and there is that impact of how much extra tenants are asked to pay versus owner-occupiers. But I would take it that because our total water and sewage bills are declining, that variable water prices are declining. Variable water prices have generally risen quite significantly over a period of time. In terms of resource rent, unfortunately, that is a constitutional challenge to have a resource rent on water. What is in place, though, is an environmental levy that is levied on each of the water businesses, and Barwon pays that to the Victorian government, and that is used to fund a range of environmental programs, but we don't actually have the power to have an outright extraction levy of the nature. In terms of manufactured water, perhaps Tracy might speak on this, but that has been looked at again as more a DECA policy matter. But Barwon, along with the Melbourne water business, have been participating in developing water resource strategies that they're done by the government with the water businesses, and that's the area where perhaps manufactured water and the role manufactured water will play in the future. I guess the big issue there's probably Barwon Water rather than Barwon Water directly, as Tracy noted, that they are doing a number of things to return water to waterways and perhaps becoming more dependent on that connection to Melbourne. But again, there, so perhaps I think I've touched on most of the things you did, but I'll sort of throw Tracy whether you want to talk a bit about the water resource strategies and Barwon's involvement with other water businesses in that.
Yes, Marcus, I think Lachlan probably is aware of it, so I'll keep it short, but obviously the government's released their sustainable water strategy for our region, the broader Melbourne, Geelong, etc. region, and that clearly signals a shift to manufactured water, a return of water to rivers and the environment. Manufactured water will be more expensive than, as you say, we're not currently paying for the actual water, it's just the transfer of it. Whereas, this will shift, I think, and help deal with that point that you raised. Since the release of that strategy, we've had the election, new ministers appointed, and I think there will be, my sense is there'll be a strong keenness to work closely with members of the community as we go forward, because those people who are supportive of a change to manufactured water, we want to hear those voices. There'll need to be leadership as we work together to bring about community understanding about the situation. I mean, most people don't even realise that the Wonthaggi desal plant is in operation, let alone that we might need another one. So, I think we've got a big job ahead of us, and my sense is that the government will be wanting to work closely with members of the community in that process. So as soon as more work is done, I think they will want to consult Lachlan.
Thanks, Tracy. Thanks, Marcus.
Thank you. And I might ask Cameron if he could come off your mute and please introduce yourself, Cameron.
Yes, Cameron Steele from People for a Living Moorabool. Thanks, Rebecca, Marcus and Tracy. My question was similar to Lachlan's, but I did want to raise a couple of concerns within the document itself regarding that topic. I noticed a reduction of $2 million in table 4.4 regarding the more expensive water sources turned on Melbourne to Geelong pipeline. Obviously, that is a crucial part of returning water to the Moorabool. So to see a reduction in monies around that initiative, I'd probably like to hear a little bit more about why that was done. And also on page 25, we've talked about the consultant not being satisfied about the $1.9 million to contribute to readiness investigations on augmentation partners for the future. And that to me just seemed, given just what we've said, I think removing money from that investigation, that process, is of a concern. We've raised that matter a number of times with Barwon Water, how they are progressing, moving to more climate independent sources of water, and with the intent of the sustainable water strategy. So I'd appreciate a view from the Commission on those two items. Thank you.
Did you want me to respond first, Marcus? Yeah.
So thanks.
So Cameron, just in relation to the return of the water to the Moorabool, we're absolutely committed to that, and it's one of the items that we're absolutely accountable for and have to return funds to customers if we don't achieve. So we are very, very active in that space. It's really about where our storages are at the moment and projecting what amounts of water will be needed over time compared to what they were in the current 5-year period. I might ask Seamus to comment on that a little further, and also how we are resourcing up for readiness work, notwithstanding that we didn't get everything that we asked for. Seamus?
Yeah, thank you, Tracy, and hello, Cameron. Maybe the latter first. In terms of the readiness investigations, I mean, I think the general reason that was left out at this stage is probably just the uncertainty around the specifics of that work, of that investigation work. But it does not doesn't mean we won't necessarily be a part of that work or spend money to do that readiness work. And we've got some some good connections with the metro retailers and Melbourne Water, thinking about those manufactured water sources previously spoke about. So it was really just, and we don't really know what that figure will be over the next 5 years. And we put the 1.9 in as an early estimate, and that was part of the reason at this stage we will leave that out, but doesn't mean we won't spend the work. What we did do is happen to get some funding through the draft response process for a resource to help us in that readiness investigation. So someone that we can really help advocate, I guess, and work with Barwon Water in that readiness work with the grid and the metro team. So we've got a bit of that money, if you want to call it, back to put some resources into that work. So we're comfortable from that perspective. And in terms of the more secure water sources, I think again we're comfortable that we've probably got what we need in the revenue requirement from the ESC, and there's no impact to, I guess, what we propose to do in terms of we'll continue to use that more expensive water supply from Melbourne as we need it through this period. So don't see any foreseeable impacts to us with that adjustment made through the draft process.
Thank you.
Thanks for that, Marcus. Did you have anything to add at that point?
Yeah, probably it was largely covered, but Cameron, under that water industry regulatory order, one of the things we have to assess the prudency and efficiency of expenditure, and that is difficult for a legal perspective when it's highly uncertain or there isn't a clear plan because you can't actually assess. So it doesn't mean we say it doesn't go ahead or it doesn't happen. It really says it's perhaps not appropriate to recover this from cost. Now they can come back in one way, they can come back with more information, say this is the firm proposal, or if it remains uncertain, to go ahead and do it or seek money for it at a later point in time. So it's not a judgment by us whether on the merit of this occurring. It's the question of saying, well, how much is known about it to justify including that within the bills people pay. So we'll wait for Barwon's response on it. But I guess we got a hint out of Seamus there.
No, thank you to all three of you, and I welcome the fact that there's still an opportunity for that to maybe be cemented in. Thank you.
Thank you, Cameron. Now we have come to the close of the hour, but we did start a little late, and certainly happy to stay online if there are any further questions. I don't have any hands up, but I will give you a moment to put your hands up and ask any final questions.
I had a question for Tracy Slater. It's Matt Bradshaw from Forest.
Hi, Matt.
G'day, Matt.
Yeah, g'day. Hey, Tracy. Great to hear that we're going to get the wastewater project on the go. Do you have a timeline for when things might start? I know you said we will start within the 5 years, and we hope to finish. But just from a community point of view, do you know when we might get going and get some information out to the people of Forest? Because we're pretty excited about getting rid of our effluent.
Yep. No, I understand your excitement about that, Matt. So look, we do remain committed to delivering the Forest wastewater system. We're currently engaging in the process of getting a design undertaken. There are still a number of aspects of the design that need to be worked through. For example, do we use a lagoon type system or a membrane bioreactor, on-site, centralised or pressurised system? So there are quite a number of technical aspects of it that need to be worked through. But we still feeling confident that we're expecting construction to commence in 2026. That would be subject to a business case being approved by our board, but with that detailed design work going on at the moment, that's hopefully something that can be done. Board approval, if appropriate, can occur towards the end of 2024, enabling construction to commence in 2026 and even be completed in this current pricing period by 2028. So the team are working on that actively, and we'll be coming to speak again with the forest community and continuing our consultation and engagement with you. So even though the funds for it are not included in the price submission, that's not stopping us progressing the work. We really, for those sort of scale projects, need to have a finalised and approved business case. We weren't at that stage, but we're getting on with it anyway.
That's fantastic, Tracy. I'm really excited. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Matt, and thanks, Tracy. Final call, last call for questions. Cameron?
Oh, if I can have a second dib, if no one else is there. It's something that Barwon Water knows that I've been on about for a long while, which has been inclining block tariffs. The ESC response noted concerned waterways, which both Locke and I are part of, did raise the issue of inclining block tariffs, and there was a response that, you know, it does have sometimes unintended consequences. I do note, however, that, you know, the document does acknowledge that renters' prices bills are likely to go up in comparison to owner-occupiers. I also note that demographically, the over 65s are an increasing slice of the rental market, and I do believe that this is something that, although I've asked for many times over quite a number of pricing submissions, that it be reflected on. And I think in Barwon Water's case, the augmentations into some of our quite wealthy coastal areas could probably benefit from an examination of inclining block tariffs. So the intention would be to at least put something together in a response, but just want to note those two aspects. Thank you.
Thank you. And Cameron, the work we're doing in this pricing period is focused on extending the reach of the Melbourne to Geelong pipeline so that we can make use of our entitlement in the broader grid and move water to where it's most needed at times when the West Barwon system is unable to provide the adequate supplies. In terms of the tenants, I think it's a really important point. In our last price submission, there was a really strong desire from our customers and community to see the proportion of the bill that is associated with the price of water, the variable aspect of the bill, to be increased. As a consequence of that, when a tenant is only paying the variable price of water, naturally that means the consequence is that that part of the bill went up. Now, we provided a rebate to support tenants to transition into that arrangement. That rebate's been very helpful in supporting all tenants with that. We're now at a point where we want to target that assistance to those who most need it. So one of the benefits of the increase in our hardship support is that we will be able to provide support to those who need it. So if you are a relatively well-off person who happens to be renting for a period of time for whatever reasons and you don't need support and help, you don't need, you know, you won't be ringing us and asking for it, or we won't be reaching out to you saying, hey, do you need it? But people who do need it will receive it, whether they're tenants or not. But importantly, the bottom line is that that support goes to those who need it. And so I think that's a smarter way of doing it than just an across-the-board rebate that might be going to people who don't need it, and not as much perhaps going to those who really do need it. So that targeted assistance that we provide is something that we are very proud of, and we're continuing to improve how we provide that support to those who need it.
Well, I'm certainly happy to acknowledge and congratulate Barwon Water on their efforts on people struggling to pay their bills. I think it's been marvellous, but I do note that in that original decision, the idea was that the landlord would be charged less, and therefore, you know, that would be an assistance in a way, but rental prices as part of household budgets now for renters has gotten just exploded. So I think the benefits on the other side of the ledger are no longer there. So, but no, thank you for that reply. Cheers.
Thank you, Cameron.
Thank you, Cameron, and thank you, Tracy. And I think that might be a neat time to call the meeting to a close. Thank you particularly to Tracy for your presentation and to customers of Barwon Water who have participated in the engagement today. I hope you all have a lovely afternoon, and please feel free to reach out and contact us through any of the avenues that we have outlined if you would like to discuss Barwon Water's price submission any further. Thank you and good afternoon.
Thank you.